It happens on the edge of sleep, when you're almost there. The kind of almost where your thoughts start losing their grammar, where the ceiling above you stops being a ceiling and becomes something else. And then, from somewhere, a memory arrives. Not a dramatic one. Not the kind you'd tell anyone about. Just a Tuesday. Maybe 8 years ago, maybe 12. You waved at someone who wasn't waving at you, or you said something in a meeting and the room went slightly quiet. Or you called a teacher Mom in front of everyone and then sat back down. The memory arrives and your body responds before you do. A small clench in your chest, a wince. Maybe you actually make a sound. Something between a groan and a sigh. Into the dark. And then you're awake again. Staring at the ceiling, fully awake, because of something that happened when you were 16. The strange thing isn't just that these memories come back. It's when they come back. Not when you're working, not when you're in a conversation, not when you're doing anything that requires your full attention. They come back in the gap, the shower, the walk you've taken so many times your feet do it without you, the 5 minutes before sleep finally takes you. But also, standing in a supermarket queue, staring at the back of someone's head, waiting at a red light with the radio off, folding laundry on a Sunday afternoon when the apartment is quiet. Any moment where the front part of your mind runs out of things to do. That's when something else seems to kick in. And what surfaces, almost without fail, is not the good stuff. Not the dinner party where you landed the joke. Not the time you handled something well. The memory that arrives is always the other kind. The one where you said the wrong thing. Or didn't say anything, and should have. Or made some small social miscalculation that no one around you would remember. And you apparently cannot forget. Here's what's genuinely strange about that. You already know it doesn't matter. Even as the memory arrives, some part of you is fully aware that it's over, that it's old, that it is, by any reasonable measure, not worth a second of your attention at midnight. You know this. And the knowing does nothing. You're a fully functioning adult. You have a job, you pay taxes, and a 14-year-old memory of a misread wave can still make you physically wince into your pillow. There's something almost impressive about that, if you stand back far enough. Researchers who study this kind of memory, the kind that shows up without being called, have found that low-demand situations are when it's most likely to appear. When the brain isn't occupied, something starts moving in the background. Old files surface. You didn't go looking for that memory. It found an open door. And it finds the door surprisingly often. Studies suggest these uninvited memories show up at roughly 3 times the rate of memories you deliberately try to retrieve. Your brain isn't just a library you visit when you want to. It's also a library that occasionally flings books at you when you're trying to fall asleep. There's also something odd about how these memories feel, compared with the ones you actually go looking for. When you intentionally remember something, a vacation, a conversation, last week's dinner, you remember it in a kind of distant, informational way. You know it happened. But when a memory arrives uninvited, especially a social one, especially a painful one, it doesn't just give you information, it gives you the feeling again. A little, like a light tap on a bruise you forgot was there. The body doesn't distinguish between the past event and the memory of the past event as cleanly as you'd like it to. Which raises the question, why these particular memories? Why always the ones where something went slightly wrong, socially? In the early 2000s, a group of researchers at UCLA put people into a brain scanner and had them play a simple video game. The game was just passing a virtual ball back and forth with other players. Or what appeared to be other players. At some point, the ball stopped coming to them. The other players just stopped including them. No explanation, no confrontation, just the quiet experience of being left out. What the scans showed was that an area of the brain associated with processing distress became active. a region involved in something like alarm. Not the same kind of pain as a physical injury, but routed through some of the same wiring. The part of the brain that says pay attention, something is wrong, didn't care that it was just a ball game. Being left out of a virtual ball game by strangers in a scanner for a few minutes, that registered as something worth flagging. And here's what follows from that. If social exclusion or social failure trips that kind of alarm, it makes a certain kind of sense that the brain would keep those moments around. Not because you're neurotic, not because you're insecure, but because whatever system is running in the background has tagged those moments as worth reviewing, as unresolved. Social pain also seems to leave a cleaner copy than physical pain. The bruise from last year is gone from memory, but the moment you called your teacher Mom, that one stayed sharp. So when the memory surfaces at 3 a.m., it may not be random. Something in your brain has marked that moment and keeps checking back on it. An alarm that was tripped once and never got the all clear. Here's the part that gets genuinely strange. A few years after the cyberball study, different researchers ran a much more low-tech experiment. They gave participants an embarrassing t-shirt to wear. The kind of thing you would not choose to put on yourself. A Barry Manilow shirt, to be specific. Then they walked the participants briefly into a room with other people and asked them afterward how many people in the room had noticed the shirt. The participants consistently overestimated by roughly double. The actual number of people who noticed or could later identify the shirt was about half what the participants predicted. Now think about it from the other side. Can you remember, in any detail, someone else's embarrassing moment from last month? Someone you know? Someone you like? Did they say something awkward at dinner, stumble over a word, walk into a room and immediately seem to regret it? You were probably there. You probably saw it happen, but it passed through you like weather. It didn't lodge. You moved on within seconds, and the moment moved with you. That's what you are to the people in the room on the day you made the mistake you're still thinking about. You were weather, which means your brain. The one that has been storing that memory, that surfaces it at 3 a.m., that produces a physical wince even now, has been defending against a threat that was approximately twice as large as it actually was. You felt watched, you felt memorable, and you were, mostly, neither. This isn't because something is wrong with you. It's a documented feature of how humans experience themselves in social situations. We're always, necessarily, at the center of our own experience. When you walked into that room, you were hyper-aware of the shirt, hyper-aware of what it meant, hyper-aware of yourself. And from inside that experience, it's almost impossible to correctly estimate how much you're registering in anyone else's mind. Because you're not in their experience, you're only in yours. So you remember that Tuesday from 12 years ago with something close to clarity. You were there, at the center of it, and the moment mattered. But for everyone else in the room, that moment was one of approximately 40,000 moments they were only partially paying attention to. They moved through it and kept going. Your brain apparently didn't get that memo. What's actually interesting, and this is the part that's easy to miss if you're focused on the embarrassment itself, is what these uninvited memories reveal about what your brain is doing when you think it's doing nothing. There are networks in the brain that become more active, not less, when you stop giving the brain something external to focus on, when you space out, when you're in between tasks, when you close your eyes on the train. This isn't the brain going offline. It's the brain turning inward, processing, sorting, revisiting, running something in the background, which means those moments when the old memory surfaces aren't random interruptions. That's when a certain kind of mental housekeeping is most likely to happen. The brain goes looking through older material, or older material comes to the surface. And sometimes what comes up is something that was filed under unresolved. You didn't ask for that memory. You didn't choose to feel that cringe. Something in there decided to run that file, and you, the you that was trying to fall asleep, just had to sit through it. You're less the one in charge, and more the one who gets notified afterward. You have about as much say in the matter as you do over what you dream about. So there you are, 3 a.m., the ceiling. That wave you gave to someone who wasn't waving at you, now surfacing for what might be the 15th time in a decade. The alarm system noticed. It filed a report. It keeps checking back, partly because the moment felt social and risky, partly because whatever system handles these things doesn't distinguish very well between a genuine threat and a mildly awkward Tuesday, and partly because the person on the receiving end of that wave, they probably don't remember it at all. The copy in your mind is crisp. Yours alone, physical pain fades in memory, blurs at the edges. But that Tuesday, the slightly too loud laugh, the misread wave, the word that landed wrong. Your brain seems to have kept a cleaner version of that than almost anything else from that year. You'll probably fall asleep soon. The ceiling will go back to being a ceiling. Whatever is sorting through old files will move on to something else. Or stop for a while. It'll come back, though. Probably not tonight, but it'll come back.